Welcome, everyone. I'm Dr. Cindy, and I'm here with my co-host, Brooke Jack. And we decided that we would spend today, and probably this will turn into a two-part series. I think we have a lot to process and talk about, but as you probably know, our area has just gone through a major natural disaster with Hurricane Helene coming through September 27th, and then just all the aftermath since that time. And we thought this was a rich, ripe experience to be able to uh, pull some pearls of wisdom out and also, just process with each other, help learn from each other's experiences, maybe be better prepared for the future if anything like this, God forbid, happens again. And most importantly, share with each other and with our listeners just how amazingly God shows up in the hardest places of things. So welcome, Brooke. It's fun to do the podcast with each other.
Oh, yeah. Oh, it's such a blessing.
Take me back to before the storm hit and kind of leading up to it, what it was like for you, your experience. When did you realize that it was a big deal? And then, share how it's impacted your community.
Yeah, absolutely. So, um, as I've shared with you before, my husband, Lucas, is a weather meteorology junkie. And
I can see
oftentimes
that.
it took me a while to even get like a weather app on my phone or anything because I just
Mhm.
asked him. I would just say, "What's the weather going to be like tomorrow? Do I need to plan to layer or a jacket or whatever?" And he would give me guidance. And so it's been just like a passion for him, not something that he's formally studied, but something that he's just self-studied. And so he's pretty reliable when it comes to weather events. And so he was telling me what he was hearing, and he was tracking models, and he was, looking at all this stuff. And he was telling me, he said they're saying this is going to be a rare event because of this stalled like wet front, moisture and all this rain that's coming in before. And so it's complicating the process of, being able to really understand the impact this storm could have. We just had that conversation to kind of just, be prepared for an intense experience, but really having just a lot of uncertainty about how it would actually go. I think it was in 2010, we had a big winter like snowstorm where I think we got close to 18 inches out in Sandy Mush. And when we
Oh,
lived out there, and we were without power for, I think, 3 or 4, maybe 5 days, maybe. I don't know if it went to 5 days. I think maybe 4 days. But anyway, so we were just kind of thinking like, what's been our longest experience without power? And let's just try to kind of
mhm.
thinking like it probably won't exceed that. um, and that was wrong, but a lesson learned. Um, so we bought extra water because we knew that we wouldn't be able to power our well. The generator that we had actually just recently had a consultation with an electrician because we have this farm. We're looking at ways to restore it and make improvements, but it's, a process one step at a time. So every now and again, we regroup and we say, okay, like, what's the priority project? What are we going to focus on? And he was like, I really want to get a panel put in that would strictly run the generator that would allow us to power the well. So he had just got a
Oh, good.
quote on doing that just a couple of weeks or so before this
I'm
storm hit.
taking notes.
Oh,
That is good.
and just exploring like what functionality that we have and don't have and that kind of thing. So we started stocking up on water, got a few more pantry items, and just made sure that we knew where all of our lighters were and our candles and
Mhm.
just those kind of things to have handy. And then it was just kind of like, let's just see what happens. I definitely started immediately on the laundry. Like that Thursday, I felt like I was nesting like I was when I was pregnant.
Mhm.
I I had the most productive day. I mean, I tackled all these emails, I paid all these bills, I,
That's
did all this
great.
budgeting and things, and just like I had the most energy I think I've had in a long time. It was like just almost like
The adrenaline.
adrenaline in the preparation. And so I
Right.
was just like, I'm just going to get as much done. And I felt so thankful afterwards because not knowing that we were going to be without internet for so long. And it was like this, oh, sigh of relief to know like these bills got paid and the laundry's done. And I have a fairly good sense of where the budget is at and that kind of a thing. Another interesting thing was at our church, we were needing to empty our storage unit. And so we decided to have a community like multifamily yard sale, which happened on the 21st. So just the week before. And for that, we had to pull out cash so that we can make change for people. And we don't typically operate with a lot of cash. We do a lot of digital transactions, but we
Mm.
had pulled out cash for that in order to make change. And we went back and forth about how much to pull out. And I said, just get this much. Just it's not going to hurt. And if we don't need it, then we can just put it back in the account. And so that was another interesting thing that like we had cash handy when we might not have otherwise had as a result of doing the yard sale. And so I just felt like there was even just a lot of grace leading up to the storm where
Mhm.
certain things and timing of certain things were happening that we would have never thought this is somehow preparing us
Yeah.
for a big weather event and a catastrophe in our region, but it was just some, little things.
Oh.
So that was kind of prepping for the storm. And then during the storm, Lucas and I were both up pretty early that morning, like 6-ish. We were hearing some of the wind and that kind of a thing. And of course, we have a 10-month-old puppy. So she always
Mhm.
wakes us up for her little potty break.
Yeah.
And so we just decided to sit in the living room and I heard him over there doing something. And I said, "Are you making coffee already?" And he goes, "Well, yeah, if the power goes out, we'll have a hot pot of coffee."
That's the way to prep.
And so we had our coffee and we were just sitting reading and watching because our we have a big window in our living room and we were just watching and
Mm.
seeing the wind gust. And we have a creek and our creek runs into another creek across the road and we were seeing it starting to spill out into the fields. And we just weren't sure how much water was coming what direction. And so we were
Mm.
really monitoring that. And I think only Abby was awake. I mean, the boys were like sleeping through this, but they have like blackout curtains and, it was like super dark in their room and they just, yeah, like slept through kind of the worst of it. It was amazing. Like around noon, the sun was starting to break through
I know.
and
It
it was the most like beautiful afternoon.
Mhm.
And while there was the creeks did flood their banks and things like that, our little corner of Buncombe County did not see near the damage of other areas. And so we could only know what we could see with our own eyes.
Mhm.
Now there were things in the road. There was a couple areas where the road had washed out, and as we were able to talk to neighbors, we were learning about some mudslides and some things that were blocking people from being able to get in and out of their driveway, and other neighbors down the road a bit, even into Canton. Lots of driveways that crossed over creeks had
Mhm.
fallen and collapsed, and so they were kind of landlocked in that sense. And but besides seeing just a very rapidly flowing creek, which on our property changed even some of the landscape of how the creek, it broadened some of the banks and
Right.
knocked certain things down. um, but there wasn't a tremendous, um, just at a glance from where we were, it was like, okay, we fared pretty well. This is okay. And we just had no idea how this storm had affected other areas of the county until about 2 days after, which was our first opportunity to actually get out. And we drove to the end of Patton Avenue, and there's an Ingles parking lot there. And it was just full of vehicles. And Lucas was like, I think that grocery store might be open. And I was like, oh, okay, well, I mean, hey, turn in and check it out. Let's just see. And as we're driving through, it's like everybody's in their car and everybody's on their cell phone. It's like, oh, everybody's here to do what we're doing, is to communicate, is to try to contact people. And so I took that opportunity to call my mom and let her know we were okay, because without being able to call or text and everything, I thought, oh my goodness, my mom is probably wanting to know that we're okay and safe, and this is probably hard for her, like this waiting. And so we let her know. But it was kind of then that we started learning more about what actually happened. I mean, my mom was telling me, I'm seeing this on this page and I'm seeing this on the news. And I'm going, you know more about what's happening in our area than we do. Like, we're
Right.
not getting any of this
Exactly.
information. And it really made me think about how dependent we are on our internet and our communications. And I've often thought about, even in reading like historical fiction books and things like that, where, they used to write letters to each other and how they had to wait for so long
Mhm,
to get a
mhm.
response back from a question that they may have asked in a letter. And even evaluating my own, like how I can get anxious or whatever about awaiting like an email reply. We need a reset. I need a reset on, these type of expectations, because we're so used to being able to just get a transfer of information, and learning to live with, like, at that place of peace in the waiting. That was something that I thought about quite a bit. So tell me your stories, Cindy. Tell me what was happening right before, because gosh, as a mom
Yeah.
and a business
Mhm.
owner and all those things, like, I'm sure there were, gosh, a multitude of things that were happening.
Well, it's very humbling to hear, just how relatively more prepared you guys were. I was clueless. I really was. I think it was Wednesday before this happened, a couple days ahead of time, that Jan, our patient care coordinator, said, you may want to think about your event on Friday.
Yes.
And so that kind of got me thinking, okay, well, I need to tune into the news a little. And I did make the call to cancel this Flourish intensive wellness retreat that we had scheduled. And that was such a hard decision,
That was
because it's
hard.
like the culmination of what I've been working for a long time. And up until Thursday evening, I was feeling bad about having, I thought I overreacted. I shouldn't have canceled it. And then, that obviously was a good call to have canceled the retreat. I am not a weather junkie. I've just maybe in the last couple of years to have the weather app on my phone that I will occasionally check to see. But I've never put a lot of faith in meteorology, because it seems like, they over under predict snow and the different events that we routinely experience. And so I just don't put a lot of stock in it. I definitely do now know to pay attention. Um, I've always thought Asheville here, we're in this little mountain community, that we're kind of sheltered from severe weather and, maybe some snow. You expect the occasional blizzard or something like that, but we're prepared for that. So
Mhm.
yeah, we did not have the level of preparation that you talked about. on Thursday evening, we had like a little flicker of our power, and I started to get, more concerned. I was tuning into the news at that point and trying to reach friends that were, out in more rural areas or by streams and rivers and things. And so definitely did have some anxiety that evening, but went to bed. And about 5 a.m., the storm woke us up, and it was just like crazy.
Mm,
The wind, we live on a couple acres and of a wooded area, and our house is surrounded by all these trees. And I looked outside, and I have never seen trees do that before. They were swaying like this,
oh,
and it
wow.
was so scary. Every 2 minutes or so, we would hear like crash of a tree coming down in the yard. And so I went and sat on my living room couch and was looking out the window of these like 100-foot oak trees just like swaying. And I'm like, it's going to come to the house. I was, we have some beautiful stained glass artwork that my mom made before she died, and it's hanging in our little sunroom outside. And I didn't even think to bring that in the night before. I really just was not clued into that it could be as disastrous as it was. So my daughter Anna and I, we ran out and got the stained glass, and it was safe, and that was a win. Brought in a few outdoor plants into the house. So at about 10 o'clock, the winds had died down enough that we, went outside just to kind of survey the property and see what kind of damage there was. And I remember seeing these big dark areas out the window, like, what is that? So we go outside, and it turned out they were these giant like root balls of these huge trees that had
Oh my
fallen
goodness.
over in our yard, like 10, 15 feet, in diameter. These, just pulled up the roots, and these healthy big trees fell down. And so we just started walking around the yard, and I lost count of how many trees were down in the yard.
Wow.
I guess some of the silver lining is that we have some mountain views now that we didn't have before. It's kind of sad. I love the forest, and just kind of feeling uh, secluded in our little land there. But it's brighter and some mountain views. Then we started walking down our driveway, and goodness, it was like Niagara Falls happening
Mm,
in the driveway. Just the massive amount of water moving down the mountain from the little natural spring there that doesn't hardly ever have water in it. And then we, said, well, let's walk down the neighborhood and see what's going on down there. And no cell phone, no internet, no power at that point. And we got halfway down the mountain and looked to the left and saw an area that's farmers' fields normally, and like a horse
mm,
farm area, turned into a raging river down below us. And so
wow.
the creek had just overflowed and totally destroyed the farmer's property below us. And so obviously we can't get out. That's the main way that we get out of our neighborhood, is through the road that passes through that farm. Then we turn and look the other direction, and we see our neighbor's house at the bottom of the mountain, just being flooded. And so we went down there and realized that they were in a crisis situation. And it was amazing to see just how many neighbors came out. Lots of men, strong men with chainsaws, were out, cutting trees down that had fallen. And our neighbors, in the driveway, there was a tree down that had knocked down their basketball hoop and penetrated the windshield of one of their cars. And so the car was filled with water. And husband and the men, they got the tree off and moved the basketball hoop, and my husband got in and started her car, and water came out the tailpipes, like water and sludge for, a good 10 seconds or so. That was something I've never seen. Uh,
Mm,
but it was just beautiful how the neighborhood, came together and helped that family.
mhm.
And and then yeah, we went home and camped in our house for a few days
Yeah.
because we did discover the other two ways to get out of our neighborhood were destroyed, the bridges. And so we were landlocked for like 3 days until the river subsided, and we were able to drive through at least one of the lanes of that road around the trees that people had cut down, and the power lines all down. It was scary. It was scary, and not being able to communicate, not even text friends and relatives, loved ones. And so, we didn't know for days what was fully going on, just like you. Um, we're very blessed. We, even though we didn't have power, we had feasted every night on the things in our freezer that were thawing, and we have a propane stove, so we were able to cook things on the stove top. And I am very dialed into the concern about the well being powered by electricity, the well pump. Honestly,
Mhm.
I didn't even realize that. I know we've lost power before in winter storms, but it's just been so fast. I never connected the dots. It's just things I
Right.
don't think about. But thankfully, my daughter had thought to take a bath, a calming bath that morning once the power went out. So she thought to leave the bath water in the bathtub.
Awesome.
So at least we had some water to flush toilets for the weekend there. And then we were able, by God's grace, our neighbors had a Starlink with a solar powered battery pack, so we were able to make a quick phone call and decided to go uh, resupply with our relatives in Georgia. So it was a scary process of navigating through the mountains with very patchy, GPS signals in a total back roads of way we don't normally go, because the main ways out of town were shut down due to the hurricane damage. And so then it was just a journey from there of trying to pick up the pieces and, quickly, get online and notify our patients of what's going on, and try to, deal with the ongoing daily tasks that are involved with a medical practice. And so there was a lot.
Yes, I was thinking about you
Yeah.
so much during that time of about the patient care and the communications and just knowing, not only do you have that concern for your family and having to navigate that, but then thinking about all of the patients that you care for and carrying that burden of concern for them too.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, I got some, terrible news about two patients who had passed away during the storm, getting that news in the first couple of days after we regained communication. So there's, grief and yeah,
Mhm.
so lots to process there. Goodness. So I could talk on and on about how it was to be without power, water, internet, and cell phone for 13 days at our house. But it was
Wow,
a joyous
13.
occasion when it finally came back on. And I realized just how much, number one, I love vacuuming. Because the day before the power came back on, I'm like, I haven't vacuumed in like, a week and a half. And I discovered we have one little electric one that has a charge. And so I went around and
Oh,
vacuumed
nice.
even before we had power on. But I
Mhm.
did it again once the power came back on, and, just doing laundry and running the dishwasher and all of that stuff and washing your hands properly with warm running water, clean running water.
Right.
That's all the things that we tend to take for granted just because they're immediately available with the flip of a switch. And
Hmm.
so lots of gratitude, uh, and also, at the same time, just a feeling of deep heaviness and grief for people around us that have, lost loved ones and
Hmm.
businesses and homes.
Hmm.
Just two nurses that I've worked with in the past had their homes destroyed.
Yeah.
Um, just learning about another, friend of the family that their home was destroyed as well. And it's just so heavy. And yet you've got to pick up and carry on, try
Yeah.
to get back to some semblance of normalcy. And yeah, it's been a process.
Yeah, that I think that the duality that has existed through this, the deep grieving and yet the rejoicing and the celebrations that have come forth in it all, um, it's an interesting thing to experience. And I think we experience that a lot in our day-to-day life, where we may be feeling sad about something, but happy about something else. But I
Mhm.
think that duality was seen very, very strongly in this experience because, like you're saying, there was a deep heaviness, especially as we became more and more aware of the
Yeah.
lives lost, like you said, the homes, the businesses, the destruction, the just extreme crisis situations that were occurring and the trauma that many people experienced. And when we finally got connected to some radio, that for the first couple of days, it was all syndicated stuff. Thankfully, the iHeartRadio team, Mark Starling and several others, they just shined so bright in this and being
Mm.
able to bring coverage to the area. And the familiarity of just their voices brought so much hope and encouragement and joy to people because, again, the isolation factor, it was beautiful how they were even allowing people to call in. And I have friends or family members on this road. If somebody's can reach out to them that's
Mm.
hearing this and then call back and let us know that they're okay. And they were just able to do so much
Oh,
of
I
that
love that.
communication and saying where resources were. And people were just being so generous and jumping in. But it was startling when we started hearing places being described as gone, like
Yeah.
downtown Marshall, a place that we're very fond of and have spent some time even with some ministry pursuits. You can't even really fathom in your mind. You're thinking, do they know what they're saying? Or do they really mean to say it that way? And then it's like you see the footage later, days later, and you're like, oh, they knew exactly what they were saying. It's
Mhm.
gone. And that's where we're going to leave you hanging until our next episode release. In part 2, we'll share more about the joys and gifts experienced through the disruption of Hurricane Helene and the bright spots where the kindness and generosity of humanity was encountered. Be sure to subscribe to our podcast so you get notified when the next episode is live. And we are here to pray for you. We believe prayer is a key component of God's prescriptive lifestyle for us and is vital to our flourishing. We would be honored to partner with you in prayer. You can visit thejoyprescription.com/prayer to submit a prayer request to our team. Until next time, stay humble, stay grateful. Shalom.